I'm Mike, and what I've done is create a garden at the fence behind my yard, which is on public property in a park for people to enjoy who walk by the walking trail that's there.
I so I saw this on my walks around the park. I did not know. Is that technically on public land?
It is technically on Johnson County Parks and Rec Department land, which I don't know if you call that public or not, but that's part of what I'll talk about here in a few minutes because there's been some developments due to that. So
I was wondering because when I went today, I walked by and it looked like maybe what you'd had up had changed or how much was there. But I think probably I want to start just this one from the very beginning. Why did you start putting up that kind of mini garden on the other side of your fence? I've seen benches. I've seen all kinds of plants. Last I saw was a whiteboard you had a message on, and there's still some messages up there. How and why did you start that?
well, it was really unintentional completely. I've lived where I lived back into the park for 15 years almost, and I've really never done anything with the area back there. And when I moved here, there was a lot of big trees that went all the way across the back because it's a duplex and I own both halves. So there's like, I think it's 80 feet across the back, 80 or 100 feet, something like that. And I really had never, it was pretty overgrown and it looked bad. And I couldn't even get near it for a long time because it's filled with poison ivy and I would get poison ivy every year just for mowing. So it was kind of rough and overgrown, the whole area back there. I didn't like it, but I also don't like getting poison ivy.
Reasonable.
So I really just kind of left it alone for a long, long time. Then the trees started kind of dying, and they died pretty quickly, one kind of at a time. It just moved down the line. And so I didn't know who owned them, whether it's on my property, because it's kind of right at the boundary. There's an old fence that goes through there. It's a farm fence, from probably, who knows, the 1930s or something. And it winds through the trees, literally some of the trees that literally grew through. They were just entwined. And so I figured that, I always assumed that was the property line anyway. But it was all just, like I said, pretty overgrown, and I didn't do anything with it because of the poison ivy. And as they started dying, I'd clean up the area a little bit. And then on my side, it was still pretty rough, a lot of weeds and overgrown bushes and stuff. But I had never had my yard fenced. So I got a privacy fence last February in my backyard. Mm-hmm. And the people that installed it put a gate in back there to access the park because I wanted them to do that. But I really didn't tell them where to put it. Turned out where they put it, you couldn't even use it because at the time when you opened the gate, all you did was walk out into an overgrowth of bushes and little weed trees and it was also a swamp because the water from the park runs all the way through there. Whenever it rains, it just becomes becomes basically a little mini creek. It's dry most of the time, but when it rains, it's where all the water runoff goes from the park. And it was a really wet spring, so it was just a swamp last year. And so I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't even use the gate. So I just started by whacking away the weeds and clearing a path so that I could walk out to the park. And then it was filled with mud and I couldn't still use it. So I ended up buying a bunch of gravel and some little plastic tunnel things, like gutter extensions to put under the gravel, and put some paver stones on top of that so that I could walk across and be dry. Okay. That was all it was about. And I got that done. And then it just looked so bad on either side, I couldn't stand looking at it because it was just, because I use it every day. Because I have a dog and I walk him in the park on the walking trail, and I have pretty much since I've lived here.
Okay.
And so I just started cleaning it up a little bit. And then as I dug down out the weeds, then it was just mud and it looked bad. So I bought some mulch and put it down, and the first rain washed all that away. So then I bought some, I went out and started buying big rock. I went to construction sites and got rocks, and I decided I was going to build a little creek bed there.
And is all this happening? You mentioned that they put up the privacy fence in February. So we're talking about February 2020, right before the lockdown, right before
the
COVID.
pandemic. Yes.
Okay.
And I put it up. I mean, it's my yard, so I put the fence up.
Okay.
And
so all this stuff you're talking about, is this all happening after?
This is all after I put the fence up. Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Because it's what started the whole thing. Because I used to walk out, I didn't have a fence, so I could walk out the side kind of through my neighbor's yard, and there was a path out to the park that wasn't all overgrown.
Got it.
That I used, but I couldn't go directly out my yard because it was all overgrown back there. And but when the fence was there, I had to build a path out to the walking trail from my gate.
Yeah.
So. And when I did that, and then I started cutting down the weeds and just saw the mud, and it just looked so bad. I wanted to do something about it. And I put down mulch, it washed away. So then I decided I was going to dig a little creek bed, which I just dug down a little bit and put some pebbles in the bottom, and then actually went to construction sites and started getting big rocks, like limestone rocks from the ground, from the construction sites, and built a border around there, and then dug a little creek, just a small little 6 or 8 inch little creek bed, and put sand and gravel in it, and then put some rocks in there to look nice, and then put lined it with both sides with big rocks from the construction site. So when it rains, it looks like a little creek bed, and then I just started buying plants and putting them in there and planting them. And then as I started doing that, people started commenting and enjoying it. And it motivated me to do more. So I kept going.
How do people so I've seen, and this is all stuff to give this is all on the other side of the privacy fence where you wouldn't see it. The people walking the trail would all see it, but you looking out your back window wouldn't see anything. How do people comment to you? How do they get a hold of you? I sent you a letter. Is it just your neighbors who know who you are came and commented?
No, actually, it was a really good. I was spending a lot of time out there because it really, to get that cleaned up and started, it took a lot of time. And then what happened after I'd started that was, of course, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And I worked at an office, and they sent me home to work. And at the time, I being single, and I'm here alone all the time, and I do Airbnb in my basement, and I had a guy staying here that was from Mexico on a work contract with Sprint at the time, and he also got sent home. So we were both here in my house working from home. And he's married and has a family in Mexico, but he couldn't go back to Mexico because of the pandemic. If he did, he couldn't come back to this job, which I guess at the time they didn't want. He probably could have done it from there, but anyway, I don't know how that worked. He stayed through June, I think, and he did help me get started on it with some of the bigger stuff because we were both bored. I mean, the only place you could go was Home Depot. Everything was closed at that time.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense to start going there and just buying plants and doing stuff out in the yard. And I'd start, but I did start with my yard inside at the time was plain. It just had the fence and grass. And I started outside on the other side of the fence before I even did my own yard.
Is that just because that was close to where, you built this thing to get rid of this sludgy pond that would develop in rain? You built that little stream out there. And so, yeah, it seems natural that you just work on that stuff there.
Right. And it was a big job, and I had to kind of finish it. It ended up being a big job. I didn't intend for it to be. So I worked on the area when I come out my yard, kind of to the north side of the fence. The south side I didn't do too much because that's where there was still a bunch of overgrowth and poison ivy big time. So I just worked on the one side of the gate and just a few feet on the other side, but I didn't go any further than that last year. And then, but yeah, I hauled in literally a ton of rocks from construction sites or more. I also then bought some smaller rocks from a rock quarry to put in the to kind of line it and fill in an area that I couldn't put anything else in because it would just wash away. Just to give it a nicer look, and it did look really nice. So as I did that, when I didn't know most of the people at the time, but I met a lot of the people that walk the trail on a regular basis from all over the area, not just from my neighborhood, and a lot of my neighbors that walk it on a regular basis.
Because you were out there working on it during the day.
Right. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was a time to socialize and keep your social distance and meet people. And then people started to, I think, look forward to see what I was doing.
Right. I know I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like something I feel, again, maybe within a month ago. I can't remember the last time I went there, but sometime in the last month. There was a bunch of stuff there. I mean, you had one of those big, like, kind of flower selling carts with plants in it. And again, like I said, a whiteboard. And I noticed some of the stuff had disappeared. Has something happened in the past month or so?
Yes. Well, what happened was, well, first of all, I had been calling the county because on the other half that I hadn't really touched yet, there was huge trees, like a whole line of trees in that area. And last year they bloomed when I started this whole thing, but they all died. Wow. Almost all at once. And wasn't anything I did. It was apparently they said Dutch elm disease, which I didn't even know we had Dutch elms here anymore. But they bloomed and then died all really fast. And so I had all these dead trees out there. It looked terrible, and that's all I could really look at. And so I started calling the county because I didn't know who owned them really. They're kind of right on the border, but they had cut down a few others.
Okay.
So I thought, well, maybe they'll cut these down. So, I did have to call them a few times. So one day they came out. I was actually out watering on my break from work in the morning. Maybe this was a month ago or so. And there was like 6 or 8 men out there, and I didn't know who they were walking around. So I finally figured out they were from the county, and I asked them. They're trying to determine what the boundary was for the property. I don't know how they determined it, but they had some sort of plat map they were looking at and walking around. And because there's, the only boundary there, which I assumed was the boundary, was the old farm fence. I just assumed that was where my property ended and the park property began.
Sure. Which
was a couple of feet beyond where the fence stopped. 2.5 feet or so beyond where the fence stopped, where my fence stopped. And so I thought that part of it at least was my property that I could do with what I want. And then the guy that was there said, actually, no, that fence doesn't indicate the boundary. That's just what the farmers used because it was convenient to put the fence between the trees back then. But that's not necessarily the boundary. So then they told me that the boundary was actually more like right where my fence is pretty much. And then I got to thinking about it. I do think that the guys that put up the fence looked at a plat map, and there was so many feet back from the street that my property went. They may have measured and put it there.
Okay.
But, so it might be actually at the boundary, and apparently that's about right. So, so I don't own anything to my knowledge now beyond the fence. And then when they were there, one of the guys said, I'd talked to one maintenance guy there before that does the park maintenance for this park, and he came out. I actually asked them to supply the rocks for me because I figured they wouldn't care. I really figured who would care if I'm beautifying this area?
Sure.
Because it looks terrible, and there's nothing else anybody's going to use this for. It's not like a part of the park that's going to be used for something else. It's just, it's just the area between the houses and the walking trail. And then there's a small, like 20-foot space between where my fence ends and the walking trail is. It's not even that, maybe 15 feet. And nothing else is ever there's no other possible real usage for that. And it's also where the drainage area is for all the water in the park when it rains. So, nobody's ever going to do anything with it. So I figured I was doing a favor to the park and everybody else by doing this. It didn't even occur to me that they might not like it. So, so when Eddie was here and he came, I actually called them last year and asked for rocks because I wanted to do some landscaping in the back, and could they provide? Because I figured they have a ton of them. It's Johnson County Parks Department. I thought they'd deliver them. In my mind, I'd put them out and do what I wanted with them. Well, then he came out and looked, and he said, "Well, we can't do that. We don't want you working and getting injured and then suing us, so we can't provide that." And then he basically said, "You're not supposed to really do anything back here." But he didn't tell me not to do it. He just said, he said, "Don't do anything permanent back here," is the way he worded it. Okay. So I kind of let it go at that and didn't think anything more of it, and kept doing stuff. And then this year, when the trees were dead, and I started calling them, and they came out and looked, that guy that I talked to the first time's boss was there, and he said, "I like what you've done, but I have to talk to my boss about this because you're not supposed to be doing anything on park property." And I said, "Okay, whatever." I really still didn't think much about it, but I did get a letter in the mail from the park superintendent, a nice letter telling me that they were going to cut the trees down. They had contracted to do that, but that to please refrain from doing any more gardening or planting in the area and remove all my personal items from park property. So I did receive a letter asking me to do that.
So you still, if your fence is the edge, I mean, you still have, like, there's a bench there. There's some stuff that was planted there, but it looks like you're not adding to it. I don't know what I have feelings about. I see this. I go to all the trails around town sometimes, and people's whose properties abut the trails, occasionally, it seems like at least one or two on every trail, somebody puts out wind chimes or messages or puts up especially pretty stuff for the people who are walking along this trail, because usually the typical trail is nothing but whatever shrubbery and trees and grass, which is awesome. But typically there's no special flowers. Nobody, Parks and Rec isn't building gardens for people along these trails, but the people who live in the houses sometimes do. I don't know. What are your feelings about that?
Well, I mean, initially I was a little put off and angry about it, I guess, because I've really enjoyed doing it, and mainly other people have enjoyed doing it. I've literally gotten letters from people, telling me how much they enjoyed this. A lady sent me one of the nicest letters I've ever received. It was a couple pages long, just telling me how during the pandemic time when things were so stressful, this always gave her, a little sense of joy when she walked by, and a place to relax, because I had put a bench out there and just forget about things, and it was very, very, it wasn't, and I was thinking about that. It's like, why do people like this so much? Because, this is Johnson County. People have thousands of dollars worth of landscaping every year, and yeah, so this is nothing compared to what you see in most yards, I mean, it looks nice, and it's but I think, the comment I got when I said that to people is like, well, number one, it's in a place that's unexpected, like you were saying, you don't normally see that on the trails.
Yeah.
Where somebody was taking the time. Number two, it wasn't cookie cutter what I did, because I didn't put in it, I built a little rock stream, and I built, and I put some, what I call, I don't know, just kind of fun things out there, some signs, like, a garden sign that said something like, leave room in your garden for the unicorns to play, with a unicorn on it. And then I put a sign out there that with arrows pointing that said, that had different, well, actually I think I can see it from here because it's in my backyard now, but just pointed to things like, and gave funky names to the forest, like and it was the Naked Play Forest or something like that. I don't know. I'll have to look. I think I can see it, because it's now right in my backyard where I can enjoy it. But, yeah, it says Bear, like BEAR, Feet Lodge, and it has an arrow pointing, and then just a bunch of things like that. So it's a fun sign.
Yeah.
That people enjoyed, and then. I put welcome to my garden. I put that out there in a sign, and I put a bench out there for people to sit in, and I put some flowers, hanging, one of those things you stick in the ground with a flower pot hanging on it next to the bench. And I put, behind that, you had some nice hostas and flowers and everything growing against back there. And that was before they cut the trees down. It was pretty shaded, even though they were dead. They were big, so they still offered some shade. And the poison ivy vines were growing real big on those trees. So
there was lots of bad shade, but shade nonetheless.
Yeah, because it was dead, but there was huge poison ivy vines in that thing, in that big tree, that were green as could be. But anyway, so people were sitting there and enjoying it, even taking pictures, because the area behind it just looked nice. So it was not cookie cutter, is what I was told. It was in an unexpected place, and people just really liked it. They and the comment that I most heard was, every time I walk by, it makes me smile.
Yeah.
So I heard that from so many people. And I got somebody that left me a painting they'd done that I keep in my office now. That I got somebody that wrote, and I should have found some of that stuff because I actually couldn't find where I put it. But somebody wrote a poem and left it for me. And
wow.
I mean, I would, and so that's what prompted me to put the whiteboard out, because people were leaving notes, and I thought, well, I'll just put a whiteboard out there so people can write notes on the whiteboard. And
okay.
Yeah. And people did. I got all kinds of notes on the whiteboard, and I left it there all summer long. Then I took it in the fall, and now I have a new one out there that I had put out there this year. But that would, people like the whiteboard, that was something they would write notes on. And I had an eraser out there and some different colored markers that were erasable that they, that they could make notes with, the dry erase markers. And so that was kind of fun. And somebody left me one of those little painted rocks and things like that. So I was just, and I would go out there because I would, in the summer I have to water it every night, and or morning. So I'd get out there water, and I would just meet people because there's a lot of regulars on that trail, whether from this neighborhood or the surrounding area.
Yeah.
And so they would just always tell me how much they enjoyed it, and I liked hearing that. It gave me pleasure. It gave me a lot of pleasure to do that. And it was more fun to me to have it that way where people could see it than to have it in my yard where nobody gets to enjoy it because it's on the other side of the fence.
So that's the thing you mentioned about Johnson. So, where we live is relatively affluent, and a lot of people have very nice front yards and very nice backyards. And I do a lot of walking outside through the public spaces. These yards are beautiful, and 99.9% of the time, they're completely empty. So people make this space around their house that is totally private property that is just for them. And for legal reasons, for personal reasons, whatever it is, however we do things, there's public space and private space, and they're clearly cut up. We know which is public and which is private. But these private spaces, they're just so beautiful, but nobody uses them. Nobody looks at them. They're not appreciated in any way. So whenever I see somebody who takes some part of their private property or some part of their time to make something for the public, for everybody who comes by, I mean, I just think it's great.
Well, and I think that's what it was more than anything, like just those things that you said. And I was, because I mean, it is true. I mean, when you drive around most neighborhoods in Johnson County, the landscaping is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just over the top. This, where I live here, is an area of duplexes, which is still a nice area. These are nice duplexes. Landscaping isn't quite as fancy through here because, there's a lot of rentals and things, but it's still nice, but, not like when you drive through the nicer neighborhoods that this surrounds.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and what was out there, I mean, it was, and I also heard people say it wasn't cookie cutter. They liked that it wasn't cookie cutter because a lot of that landscaping, as nice as it is, it becomes just part of the land. You don't even look at it because it's just,
Yes. Everybody sees a style they like, and then, or whatever's fashionable for front yards and backyards, and all the backyards look alike and all the decks look alike. Everything just looks alike.
Right. And in Johnson County, that's what it's known for is, suburban look-alike.
Right.
So, but I mean, I like living in Johnson County, and it's a great place to live. But yeah, that was totally different looking the things I did. There was no cookie cutter about it. I've never been a gardener. I don't know anything about gardening. So this has been a learn as you go process. And people would say, "Oh, you must be a great gardener." It's like, no, I'm not a gardener at all. And some of the stuff I planted died. Some of the stuff came up. I was surprised how much came back this year, and I was surprised at what didn't come back because one of my favorite thing is these canna lilies or calla lilies, whatever they're called. They're huge flowers with these big green leaves, and they're beautiful. And they say they're perennial, but none of them came back. And then that's because I found out they're perennial for certain areas and for certain climates, but we're a little bit too far north for them to really be perennial.
Okay.
So I was told that I can actually dig those up and take them in the bulbs and take them inside for the winter and keep them in a dry place and then go take them back out in the spring. So I'll probably do that with these this fall. And and I'm not going to completely stop I mean, I'm not going to plant anymore out back, and I'm not going to actually do gardening, but I will still go out there. And a lot of what I did is perennial things that will come back. It just needs to be kept cleaned up, or it'll get overgrown really fast if nobody's out there maintaining it. And right now it's a little bit overgrown because I got a little bit put off and mad, quite frankly, when I first got that letter. I just haven't done anything out there.
Right.
But then now I look at it, it's like, oh, it's getting all overgrown already. I need to clean this up. And I actually did just talk to the guy that sent the letter is the superintendent of Johnson County Parks, and he gave me his number, and I called him today, and had a nice talk with him. So I understand the reasoning about why they can't just let people go out and take over park property.
Sure.
There are some valid reasons for that, and he didn't really get into all of them, but there's liability issues. If I get hurt, or that bench I had out there was an old beat up bench, if it falls and if it cracks and breaks and somebody gets hurt, the county's liable for that.
Right.
If somebody's looking at my gardening area and trips on a rock that I put out there and hurts themselves, then they're the ones that get sued, not me. And also there's, if I start maintaining it for a period of time, he didn't say this, but there's also, potential for people to claim ownership rights. If you do that for so many years, I would never do that because there's no need for me to have that property. It's not worth anything. But these are things the Parks Department has to be concerned about, and also if I do it, then everybody else thinks they can do it and starts doing stuff, and not everything that everybody does looks nice.
That is true.
Yeah.
This is the tough part. I'm with you. I understand the arguments why possibly somebody, it's almost like you're going to be kind of a garden squatter where your property will just start leaking into the county land, or vice versa, or that the legal problem of if we say directly or indirectly that you're allowed to put stuff here and then something happens here, but we're responsible, something happens to you or somebody else. The idea that if somebody puts a bench on the back of their house and I go sit on it and it breaks and I get stuck by a nail or something, the idea that then the problem is that I would sue you, that would not enter into my mind. Or if you're out there, where I'm sure if you're out there working with these big stones that the county gives you, and you wrench your muscle in your back and you have some medical fees, you wouldn't think to sue the county. But we've kind of handed over kind of adult responsibilities to the legal system. Now we just hand it off to the legal system and say, well, whose fault is it? We'll let the law decide. When, I don't know, but if people would do a little more taking responsibility for their own actions, and the fact that life is risky and you take risks, but that's just not the world we live in right now.
No, it isn't. It's a very litigious, or whatever that word is.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And people look for ways to make money from,
yes,
big places like the county. It's just that simple. There's a lot of people like that out there. And, and I get that. I mean, I was at first a little mad about it, but, there's several ways I can look at that. The bottom line is and it's the most important bottom line is it's not my property to do with as I want. That's just the bottom line. Right. I don't own the property, and it is not up to me to do with it what I want without permission. I should have called and asked permission, but had I done that, they would have just told me no.
Right.
And I did ask for the rocks, and they told me no to that. And I called them, and they even sent a guy out to talk to me, but they didn't, he didn't say specifically at that time, don't, stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
But I hadn't really done anything at that time yet, that, compared to what it became. And the other thing is, I was, because of how much this was enjoyed by others, and I enjoyed doing it, don't get me wrong, but it was a lot of work to keep that up and do that. And it was starting to kind of overwhelm me a little bit, to be honest, because I have a big yard here on this side that needs taken care of.
Yes.
And I wasn't doing that because I have two sides of a duplex that I maintain the yard for. And, if I'm out there, it really started to surprise me how much time and effort it was taking to keep that nice. And I was adding to it. I was going to go down the other side because they took the trees down and took a lot of the poison ivy with them. because a lot of us go to the trees.
Yeah. So now it's like really wide open on both sides of your duplex.
Yeah, and it's too wide open. The other side to me looks really bad now, and I want to do something with it. We'll see. I will keep in contact with the county about that. Maybe I don't know if I did ask if they would put a bench on the walking trail, because people have come to rely on that. There's several, older couples that walk on a daily basis that told me how much they enjoy having that bench. And it's their resting point on their walk. So I did ask him if he would put a bench out on the trail. Now, I don't know where he'll put it.
Sure.
It would be great to me if they put it right out here behind my house. But they could put it anywhere on the trail, so I didn't specifically tell him where. But I hope they put it out here. But he did say they would do that. And they're getting ready to come in and repave the walking trail. He told me within the next couple of weeks. So he did want to give me a heads up that they're going to be working on that, the paved portion of the trail. So, but I mean, for me to get out there and maintain that, that's the other thing. I was creating something that needed maintenance. And so, now what's out there now and what's left and what will stay is perennial stuff that'll come back every year. And I can probably manage to keep that under control. I'm not, and I'm really not supposed to be out there, but kind of what they said is they can't stop me from de-weeding it, but I'm not really technically supposed to be doing that, so, but I probably will continue to de-weed and maintain it. What's there already is a great improvement over was there. What I did really isn't going to go away other than the personal property I had out there, which was the fun stuff that people like to look at.
Right.
The bench to sit. I had a huge garden cart out there.
Yes.
And filled it with flowers, which that garden cart was kind of just an accident because I didn't go looking for that. I saw it at not the home store, the other one, Marshall's and Home Goods. And it was like $400. And I saw it in there and I thought, well, I didn't really pay that much attention because I wasn't going to spend $400 on something like that, but it was pretty big and it required, somebody had to have a truck to take it because it didn't come apart.
Yeah.
And it was all welded together. So you had to have a truck to pick it up and take it in. And, I shop there a lot and it kept going down in price. So it got down to as low as $80.
From 400. Okay.
So when it got to $80, I bought it. And then my brother has a truck. So I got his truck and picked it up. And because I thought that'd be perfect out there. Then I can just buy a bunch of flowers and put in it. And that really kind of that really added a lot of extra depth and color to the garden and made it a lot more interesting because it was a big cart.
Yes.
With flowers and hanging up pots and stuff in the cart itself. And now I've got it in my yard. It's like right now it's in my front yard. And I'll probably put it in my backyard where I can really look out and enjoy it. But, there'll be times when I'll probably roll it out there and leave it out there for a day or something in the park area and then roll it back. There's not really much they can do or say about that if it's not, and I don't think they'd really care, so, maybe like on Mother's Day this year, I put, by the bench, I bought a bucket and put roses and with a note for the mothers to take a rose.
Oh,
it was real popular. Matter of fact, that kind of exploded on Next Door Neighbor. Somebody took a picture and there was tons of comments and likes on that. Somebody told me that went national, that there was thousands of likes. I don't know if that's true.
Okay. So you're not tracking all this social media yourself.
Well, then this Nextdoor, I did post on Nextdoor because so many people have grown to be accustomed to the garden out there. And I had so many comments. I did post on Nextdoor that I had received a letter requesting me to remove my personal items and stop planting out there. Right. So I did post something about that on Nextdoor and there's over 100 comments on that with people, understanding and not understanding. Cause I did say, this isn't my property. I have to comply with what they're requesting. And that I was just posting it to let people know why I removed, all the items that were out there. And it seems like most people that are walkers out here are on Nextdoor, and that's a pretty popular site in this area. So, and then I also found out when I called the park superintendent, he actually had been forwarded that. So he had actually read the comments too. So
it's tough because I am super sympathetic to the idea of people kind of offering more space for the public to enjoy on their own choice like this. And I understand all the risks with that, and I understand where the county's coming from. I can't, imagine if they had a blanket statement. It's all about, we got to treat everybody equally. So if they have a blanket statement that says, well, you're welcome to put up pretty things on county land. I mean, where does it end, and how far does it go, and who's responsible for taking care of it? Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's a good way to, after reading all the comments on that next door, it kind of helped me even understand more why they have to be vigilant about this, because, people do get a little bit nuts. Not that any of those comments were nuts. They weren't, but
they were really strong opinions about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people just felt like, I should be able to do this. And other people understood why I shouldn't be able to do this. And there was this whole debate. It's like, I didn't put it out there to make a debate about it. I was just put it out there that they told me not to do it, so I'm not going to do it, beyond what I've already done.
Right.
And there won't be any of the fun. I think, a lot of what made it fun was those extra things I put out there that I can't have out there anymore. And I also have signs on my fence, like one of them says, do more of what makes you happy. I can leave the signs on my fence, and that's my fence.
Yeah.
So I have a couple signs on the fence, that I will leave, for people to read, and people enjoy that part of it. And I have I made, when you walk up, it looked really nice and welcoming. And that's, I have the pathway up and I have paver stones I put down in that gravel that I put down so you can walk out up to my gate. I'm not taking any of that out. That'll still be there. And I told him I wasn't going to remove it, and he didn't say anything. I mean, it isn't supposed to be there, but they're not making me remove that, to my knowledge. And then I have my address written on the gate with a little decorative mailbox that I found at an antique store.
Yeah.
And so it just looks really welcoming and fun, and I'll leave those things there. So it's not like it's completely going away. It's just not going to be what it was.
Right. It's not going to be the growing gardening installation. It reminds me a little bit. There was a trail, has to be now a couple years ago, where there's a trail that runs behind big expensive houses on one side, and I think there's school, and then just sort of easement on the other side. But it's a nice forest trail where somebody set up fairy houses and put a bunch of fairy houses and trees, and they did it. They did it at night. And then the things were just there the next day. And that lasted a while. I don't think the county made them take that off the trail. And it started to get a reputation for I saw people taking their kids to that trail and everything. At some point, somebody trashed them or something, and they decided to just relocate them after that. But
I mean, I did see somebody actually posted the story about that on the next door neighbor site in my whole thread with this. And they said that they were made to take them down. I don't know if they, they put a link to the thread, which I haven't even read. And I bike ride. So I bike ride the trails all the time. Yeah. And there's an area out south in Olathe on the what is the Indian Creek Trail, but it becomes like the South Indian Creek Trail or something, where somebody has posted signs all over the place with little sayings on them and little paintings, and it's really fun and artsy, I guess. And I was thinking about that. I was like, well, I wonder who does this and what. Now, that's not Johnson County Parks and Recs that maintains that trail. That's the individual cities that it goes through, I think, that do the trail.
Yeah.
So whether that's okay or not, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't seen those signs there before, and I was just riding through there not too long ago, a few months ago maybe, and those signs weren't there. So I don't know how long they've been there. But it was kind of fun. I stopped and read them. There was a whole bunch of them. It went on for a while. So I don't know whether it's a neighborhood group project or it seemed to me like it was something more than one person was doing. So that was kind of fun. And this was sort of similar, except it was isolated and it was more personal. So, and it was actually, much more, that wasn't a garden. It was decorative. This was, but this has been a lot of fun, and I'll focus on my yard. Like I can put all those nice things that I spent money on in my yard now.
So you can look at them for a little while. It does. I mean, I think it's fascinating because I think what you're telling me about the evolution of this garden, you realize the difficulty. So if you build, because personally, I look at it and I'm like, this is art, whether you want to call it gardening or landscaping. somebody took something that wasn't there before and they made something out of nothing, and here it is. And then either you have to walk down the two things. Either it's temporary and it falls apart and you let it go, or somebody has to be responsible for maintaining it, which is what you found, this difficulty with, if you build something like this, you have to maintain it for the public and yourself, or the risk of, the lines drawn. There's other people whose job it is to police the lines between private and public property and make sure that everybody's following the rules. And I don't know, the maintaining is hard. The legal part is hard. Sometimes you just wish anybody creative with a creative idea could just throw it out there, because it makes people's lives better in small ways, but small ways we forget. And I know that's a hard balance to get all those three things. You make something, then it's got to be maintained, or it starts to look bad, which is part of their worry, or it breaks the rule for that area. And how do you let some people break the rules and some others? Yeah, it's just complicated. It sounds like you're more nuanced. I could see somebody else who did this. Again, people who decide this is going to be their hill to die on. And so then they go to war. So then they go to war with the county, they go to war with the city, because they're mad about some decision. And it sounds like you've much more woven your way through that to figure out how much you want to do and how much you want to fight for, how much you want to maintain.
Well, I mean, I work for a living as a supervisor in a call center in customer care, and I take a lot of calls from angry people. And what that teaches me is, I think I've learned a lot from that, quite honestly, about where you pick a hill to die on.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, this isn't my property, so this isn't a hill I can pick and die on. It's not, I'm not the one who decides what happens.
Right.
And some things you just have to accept, And I tell people things all the time they don't want to hear, and they keep arguing with me. They think they're going to get to somebody who can do what I want them to do. And they don't understand, no, there's not anybody I can get you to, but they keep insisting,
right.
And it's like, okay, do I want to be that person? No, I don't want to be that person. You just have to grow up and learn to live with reality,
Yes.
And I wish more people would do that. And there is a lot of, particularly in Johnson County, a lot of, I want what I want, and I'm going to get what I want. And, there wasn't a whole lot of that here. I mean, nobody was mean or anything
right.
like that on the threads, but there were people that didn't seem to get that you can't just do something that isn't on your property and expect it to be okay, without asking permission, so just because it looks good, so.
It is that expectations. I think if you're in a comfortable place, if you work hard and you're in a comfortable place that's safe, it feels like all your needs are met almost all the time. And then if something goes wrong or you don't like the way something is, it's more of a shock to your system. Well, this is really unfair. And then if people would step back, maybe they'd say, well, you have an expectation that you should have this. And I understand that. And it's hard on you to let that go. But I see what you're saying. If people would just think a little more about that.
There's things I could have done out there that would not have drawn attention to anybody that would have been fine.
Right.
Right. Nobody would have said anything probably had I not started putting the personal stuff out there. That's probably where the line went wrong, because it wouldn't have been so obvious, I guess. And so, but it still could have, I could still do some things out there that look nice, but looked a lot better than it did, but aren't going to draw attention to anybody. So I didn't need to put the bench out there. I didn't need to put the big garden cart out there. If I had just done the little path to my, to the pavers that I put by itself and put the rocks out there and the flowers, I doubt anybody would have ever said a word to me.
But if you hadn't taken the extra step of investing yourself a little more in that stuff and seeing things you liked and thought would be pretty out there, all those people wouldn't have been touched. We've all seen a trail that runs from somebody's house onto the trail. We've all seen people who put up some bushes. The fact that you put that, you said it a number of times, that there was, personal touches there. I mean, I think that's the thing that touched people, was your personal stuff there was the thing that touched other people.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it really did strike a nerve with people, because I was really surprised at the number of people who told me just how it made them, smile, and how much they enjoyed it, and how, it made me feel good. And that was part of the motivation. It made me feel good, and that's fine too, because we all needed something to make us feel good this past year. So,
Yeah.
But I also enjoy making others feel good, and if that's a way I can do it, then that was great. So, and I didn't realize that what I did, helped other people in some, even if it's in some small way, it's worth doing. So,
what I think you've alluded a little to this. What is your plan? Has it kind of been a day-to-day, week-to-week evolution? Do you have a future plan for what do you want to do with the back of your fence now? Like the next year or the next 3 months or the next month,
well, I mean, I did have a plan, but that's pretty much been halted.
Right.
Because I was probably going to, wait till fall when all the growth. Now what I have where they cut down all those, there was 10 trees they cut down out back,
yeah,
which I didn't know they were going to cut 10 down. And I don't think all of them were completely dead. So I was a little surprised they took 10 down. And I was also surprised that they took them all down, because I did think that a few of them were completely on my property, because I thought my property went further out than it apparently does. So I didn't expect it to be just complete. I sit here in my dining room table looking out over my backyard, and I can see, and it sits a little higher than the backyard so that I could see into the park. And I didn't used to be able to see what I see now. I can see all the way to the other side of the park. And
right. Yes.
I can see the people walking on the trail all the way across the park, and I can see. I don't want to be able to see all that. I was used to be able to stand here and be shielded. People couldn't see me, and I couldn't see them from a distance. And it's going to take some getting used to. I would plant more trees out there if it was up to me, and I would clean it. I would go on further down to the other end of my property, which I've only done half of it, and do what I did on this side.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. And it would be a slow process. It wouldn't be something I would do all at once, a little bit per year, but I really can't do much now. I mean, because I can't really go cut down. What's left I hate what's left out there, because now it is just a bunch of overgrown. I don't even know what you call it, because they're not really bushes. They're just big, tall weeds on that side. But I don't know what to do with that, because I'm not happy with it, but I can't really go cut it down now. I may have some conversations with the county and see if they can do something out there. No guarantee I'm going to have any luck with that. And then on my side, since there's not a fence on the other side, whatever I do in my yard can be seen. So currently there's not a fence. That could change too, but I don't have any immediate plans to put a fence up on that side. So.
Oh, you're right. Yes, one side of the duplex at your side has that privacy fence, but then that other half that you don't live in, right, has no fence, just grass.
Right.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of nice privacy there, because there was these big, huge trees, so nobody could see anything on their yard at all. Now it's all open. It's just completely open, and it feels weird to me to even look at it. And I don't really like it, but. So I don't know what's going to happen. I do want to do something out there, but I have to do it in compatibility with whatever the park people will allow, or just get them to do it.
Yes.
And that's probably what I'll do, is not bug them, but persist a little bit to get them to clean that area up a little bit and maybe plant something else. Because if I can't do it, then I'll try to get them to do it, but it'll probably take a little bit of persistence and time if they do anything at all. So because. The county park's a big system. I looked online. There's a lot of county parks, and this is one of the smallest ones. And this is an 80-acre park, I think. So it's the smallest, like one of the smallest of the county parks.
Yeah, you're right. It feels big. So I feel like I go to all the parks within a 30-mile, 40-mile radius. At some time or another, but you're right. It feels big, but you're because there's a lot of small city parks, but you're right. As far as county parks go, you're right. It's really small compared to the other ones are gigantic. So,
all right. Because others are like 1,000 acres or more.
Right.
I thought it was more than 80 acres. I got online and looked it up, and it said 80 acres. I thought it was more than that. Because I've walked it, this park is my backyard. So, and
yes.
My dog is old now, and he can't walk the whole way around the trail anymore. But for years, I walked the whole thing almost every day, and the trail around behind Johnson County Community College. And it felt bigger than that, because if I do the whole mile loop around Johnson County, I think it's 2.5 or 3 miles. So, and I think it's mile and a quarter, a mile and a half around this loop in the park, I think. But I've done it so many times. I thought it was bigger than that too. And the dog park is here, but it says online it's an 80-acre park. So, and it has the lake, the little pond up there. They call the lake, but it's a pond, big pond. Yeah, and so it's really nice though to have it. And I'm thankful they've done some nice things to the park with the dog park. And I don't know what's going to happen behind me that used to be soccer fields, but they built those fancy soccer complexes in Johnson County now, and I haven't seen any soccer out there in the last couple of years. So
no, now there's just it's like most parks in cities. There's trees are expensive sometimes to maintain. So I think the default they do is what they kind of did with those trees behind you. If some of them are bad or there's a problem with them or they're dumping stuff, whatever they like, cut them all down, turn it into grass. So we wind up with a whole lot of kids play equipment that's unshaded kids play equipment and maybe some benches and a whole lot of grass. So grass and playground equipment are the favorite things. So yeah, now there's that giant stretch. It's just a bunch of grass out there, right? A ton of grass.
Well, and I don't know if they're even using it for soccer anymore because I think they've probably migrated to the soccer.
Yeah, I think so too.
For stadiums everywhere. So I want to ask the park if there's any plans for what they're going to do with those big open areas that were soccer fields. So hopefully not too much because I'd be afraid they were going to build something there. So
yeah. Well, even though you have to be more thoughtful about what you put out there, I will be watching to see how it changes in the coming weeks and months. And I'll just echo all those other people that I really appreciate you doing that. This last year was rough. And it was nice seeing somebody who took time to face something to all the people who weren't going to work, all the people who've been laid off, all the people there with their kids that weren't going to school. Just something, exactly as you said, something different, something personalized, as opposed to the nice but standard kind of park atmosphere. So I appreciate it.
No, I enjoy doing it, and I'll still maintain what's out there, and just be in closer contact with the park.
Right.
Do major change, or